Welcome to After the Letter, our companion conversation following this week's reading of the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. One of us has spent time preparing and narrating the letter, while the other is hearing it with fresh ears. Together we reflect on what surprised us, what challenged us, and why Lewis's observations still feel relevant today. Last week, Letter 8 introduced the idea of peaks and troughs, the natural fluctuations in enthusiasm, motivation, and faith. Letter 9 asks a slightly different question. What do we do when we're actually in the trough? Screwtape sees it as an opportunity, not simply because the patient feels low, but because feeling low may make him reach for things in ways that don't really satisfy him.
This letter really resonates. The whole idea about doing something, whether it's for pleasure or as a distraction, I think this is the heart of what a lot of people do. They say that they're doing something because they enjoy it, but they're doing it
because it's a habit.
Yeah, maybe it's a habit, but it's like pleasure can be a problem. The idea that physical pleasure can be a way of moving from oneself. When somebody's moving away from their faith or they're moving away from the thing that's difficult, rather than working through that, then looking for a distraction, and that distraction being something that gives them pleasure. I totally can see how that can then turn into a habit.
It's interesting that Lewis is not against the pleasures in this. And Screwtape points out that the devils didn't invent the pleasures. In fact, they've yet to be able to invent one pleasure. So pleasure is definitely what Screwtape would call the enemy's invention, which then begs the question, if pleasures are created by God, then it's not whether a pleasure is good or bad, it's what we're doing with it.
Yeah, I get that. Why are we doing it and what we're doing? If the pleasure is the replacement for something, to fill a hole, to fill a gap, to fill a need,
a crutch,
then it becomes problematic.
There's clearly a paradox here, because the more we rely on something to make us feel better, the less satisfying it can become.
Yeah. When we go into a trough and we got doubt or we're uncertain, that's usually not the best time to lean into pleasure.
Because it distracts you from the thing that you need to be doing.
True, but then it's really difficult because in the language of today, part of that is, so what is self-care? And self-care is part of doing what makes you happy. It's a tricky one. I think then it comes back to what you were saying about it can turn into a habit. Yeah.
I've heard you refer to mindfulness in all things before, and I think that's something that I've tried to take on board as well, is a certain mindfulness in regards to even just simple things. Mindfulness makes one look at what one is doing.
Yeah, like I've heard somebody else use this language of sit on an eagle's perch or something, look outside of yourself and what you're doing. We can be in a moment and really enjoying it. It doesn't then mean, oh, I need to step out and just check why I'm doing it. I think more of it's to do with that sense of compulsion and the feeling afterwards. I don't know, it's almost like that endorphin thing. When something becomes a craving.
I agree, yeah. Less is more, and it's the law of diminishing returns. Sometimes when you do something to excess, the excess comes when you're still doing it, but it's no longer pleasurable. Screwtape wants the patient to believe that the current state is permanent. Why do you think that that might matter?
Well, it's more of a distraction. You keep somebody in that space, they're more likely to stay in the trough that we were talking about. It just takes people further and further away from coming out of whatever that funk or that low or that ebb, however it's referred to. It stops being a temporary thing and it becomes a more entrenched way of being.
And it feels as if it'll always be that way.
Yeah, you've got ebbs and flows and you've got ups and downs and then you've got spirals and people can just spiral downwards.
Yeah.
And in terms of getting stuck in chasing pleasures of the senses, you kind of forget that there was ever anything else. You get trapped in your body.
Yeah.
Rather than moving into a higher state.
Yeah.
We all know people, and I see it on a daily basis. I see it all around me, that this is something where people get stuck.
So in saying that nothing will change, perhaps the danger is not only experiencing that trough, but allowing it to rewrite the whole story of what went before.
Yeah. All the distractions that we've got now, ways of getting that little endorphin rush. We're of a certain age where a lot of it used to come from staying up late at night, just literally just watching the telly, yeah.
Being out late.
Yeah, and now I think it's moved into just looking at other people having fun, other people having good lives, other people enjoying themselves. It's gone one step further. It's not even us seeking out our own pleasures. It's us living through other people's pleasures, which may not even be real.
Well, exactly that, yeah. People experience their only pleasure through watching generated pictures of others having pleasure that was actually just formed by a AI. This creates a big problem because if it becomes possible for people to be fed the exact thing that gives them an endorphin rush in the exact way that they want it all the time, they'll never want anything else. They'll never want to do anything at all, including learn.
I don't know whether it was in the 90s. There was a film called The End of Days. You know, you literally put these sensors on your head and you could experience being another person and you could experience that pleasure. And then there's, even in The Matrix, they kind of revisited that. People were trading in other people's experiences.
Yes.
Now we're reaching the point where you've got immersive glasses and immersive experiences where you can actually essentially experience it.
Yes, and if it becomes possible to implant a chip in a brain that will simulate those experiences, then not only will a person never have to look beyond that for any kind of pleasure at all, but they will never think their own thoughts again.
Pleasure in and of itself is neither good nor bad. But if it's there to relieve a boredom and not be able to sit with oneself and sit with one's own discomfort, then yeah, you kind of start to forget what's real and what's true and what matters.
Yeah. Before internet and these devices, we found pleasure in the physical world through doing things or meeting people. It was all physical, it was all in the world. Sometimes the greatest pleasure could be had through using our own imaginations to construct things that we couldn't find anywhere else. Now that imagination has been co-opted and could be weaponized against us so that our own imagination becomes our own trap.
Yeah.
Perhaps we have a responsibility to pass on our understanding as one of the last generations that knows what it was like before these devices came. It wasn't great, but it was good.
Well, it was different.
It was analogue.
Yeah. There were other ways of solving problems, and that involved using body, mind, and spirit. It's about filling empty moments. I'm in a bad mood, or I'm in a bad place, or whatever. I'm going to go for a walk. Who knows? I'm just going to go and walk. So in the moment, there's no pleasure necessarily, other than maybe just moving one foot in front of the other. As I come into myself, I might start noticing what I can see and what I can smell, and maybe I notice the breeze on my skin or the sun that's coming through the trees or the wind that's blowing through the leaves, and I hear something. So that brings me into the now, and maybe the chat or whatever that's going on in my head quietens down and I can be much more in the moment. So then by the end of the walk, hopefully, not only have I enjoyed the walk and enjoyed that experience, I've been able to literally walk through that difficulty. So when I walked out the door compared to when I walked back in through the door, something shifted. So it was a pleasure in and of itself, but maybe it's also moved me out of that trough.
It was a pleasure, but it also had a purpose.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a pleasure.
No, but there was no expectation there, maybe being open to being in the moment and just...
Which is a pleasure in itself.
A pleasure in and of itself. Does every moment have to be filled with excitement and activity and...
Well, it's worth saying that every moment does not have to be filled. Perhaps genuine enjoyment sometimes depends on knowing when something is enough.
Yeah. I think that's tricky for people. It's tricky for all of us.
Well, maybe we're lucky enough to be coming into an understanding that there are no problems, only solutions. It's an old builder's maxim, but I think it's a good way of going forward in life.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for another After the Letter conversation. If you haven't yet heard Letter 9 itself, you'll find it in our main playlist. Next Sunday, we'll continue with Letter 10, followed by another companion conversation later in the week. Until then, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you recognise the difference between something you genuinely enjoy and something you've begun using simply as an escape? Or perhaps, why do we sometimes keep reaching for more, even after something has stopped giving us pleasure? As always, people will approach Lewis from different literary, philosophical and faith perspectives, so please keep the conversation thoughtful and respectful. Thank you for listening.